So continuing our series with Troy Naquin, God, I can't pronounce his last name. Troy Naquin. We're just going to call him that. It's French, folks. It's French from Louisiana. So anyways, continuing our series with Troy, or as you may know him, CheFPV, we get into kind of his origin story, and we also start talking about what it's like to have made it in the FPV industry. Troy's job, working for Flynoceros, is as the operations manager. And he has a full-time FPV related job. But as you hear, that is not necessarily as glamorous, nor does it involve as much flying as you might think. Hope you guys enjoy this interview. Bye. Welcome to whatever this show is going to be called. I don't have a name. I think it may be freestyle, but I'm not 100% certain on that yet. I think it's going to evolve a little bit. I want to see what it becomes. It's not necessarily a podcast. It's not necessarily a YouTube cast, but it's something in between. So, it's together. Anyways, we were sitting here with Troy Naquin.
Naquin. Yeah, there you go.
If you don't know him by that name, then you probably know him by CheFPV or CheFPV.
CheFPV, yes, that would
CheFPV.
Be. Or, like you said, Joe Scully likes to call me CheFPV. So.
CheFPV, okay. Now, already dropping the names. So,
no, I was not.
CheFPV.
That one. Yeah.
CheFPV is dropping names already, and
yes.
So let me, all right. So here's the deal. I want to get into your perspective and see the things that from your eyes, right? And that is, I mean, the only way to do that is for me to ask you a bunch of questions. So yeah. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to let you roll with it.
Hey, I want to make sure everybody knows I have not heard, probably most of these questions, if not all. There's a few that we might, right?
Right. So yeah, we did talk beforehand, but what Mr. Shea does not know is that what Troy does not know is that in the process of preparing, I changed a bunch of the stuff that I'm gonna talk to you about, but I actually think it'll be for the better. So let's go ahead and get into it. Tell me, what is your origin story?
Oh man, my origin story. I love that question. And before we do that, Michael, you are filling a gap in our community that I think has been desperately needed, and I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
This kind of came about from me just reaching out to you, much like I have many people in the community over the years, but just kind of saying, hey man, what you're doing seems really cool. And, we had conversation from that. And so thank you for the conversation that night. I think we had a phone call really quickly after that.
Yeah, it was a phone call, yeah.
Yeah, and it literally spawned from me watching a video of you and interviewing, obviously, Chad, that we all know now. And so anyways, I digress. Back to my origin story. It was such a great way to ask that. So thank you for asking me to be here and asking my story. So funny story. It starts.
I see the 3DR shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, it starts a little bit here as far as my YouTube persona, CheFPV. Those things actually have roots well before FPV. I was actually doing ground RC, rock crawling, scaling, building bashers, basically the FPV scene of the ground RC scene, before FPV was like a thing. And we were filming and creating content, and I was known as ATX RC Addicts. And then that changed to ATX RC Productions as I started getting into YouTube. And that was always in my head as, man, RC is really cool. Filming RC and with RC is really cool. And then drones popped up, and this was like 14, 15. And they started popping up into hobby shops, and I started hearing people tell me I should go fly. And I laughed at them. I'm like, dude, I don't have that kind of money. as I like walk in, like a $2,500 rock crawler, right? Like custom built, like everything. So I eventually got convinced that I should try a drone. And it was by, man, people may know this. So RC Militia, and like they're in Nevada, and there was a guy there that he started getting into drones, and he bought a DJI Phantom FC40, and he started flying it, and he was shooting like abandoned buildings and things. And then I saw the Sharpoo video, and like everybody saw the Sharpoo video, right? Like going through the circle wall holes and like the bando, and it was just that plus everybody else's origin FPV kind of video was the Star Wars style woods racing in
Yes.
UK, I think it was, right? So like I see this, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna do this. So I had a week off of vacation from being a chef. I was a chef at the time. I'd been in the restaurant industry for a couple of years, had been really successful at managing restaurants, and I had made basically, I was the second in command of a pretty well-known local restaurant that had multiple, not chains, but multiple privately held, restaurants. They were very highly regarded. In fact, if anybody knows the Carrabba's, it was part of that chain's family, so that owned the place.
Yeah,
So
okay.
anyways, one of the original founders of Carrabba's, actually. So anyways, digression. I get back into, I wanted to fly. So I had a week off vacation. I planned it to where I ordered a DJI Phantom 2 Vision Plus.
Oh, man.
I ordered it from Amazon, and it was an open box, 99% good. Everything was checked out except the box had been just opened. So I took a chance and I ordered it. And I get it. Boom. It's like a complete like somebody bought something and replaced their like 3-year-old used, not really,
Oh, no.
used unit, and sent it back. So like I'm like, oh my goodness, I spent this whole week that I was going to learn how to fly, and I got mad. I called Amazon and yelled at them, and it told them they owed me a brand new one for the same price, and they laughed at me, and they were like, no, we'll refund your money. So they refunded my money, and I bought all the parts to build an F450. So I built it, and I flew it, and it almost flew away the first time I flew it. And it came back and landed where it was supposed to because I programmed it right and because I followed directions. And that started my like drone journey. So like I started putting GoPros on that and filming. And very quickly I dropped all the other RC stuff and I just lived in the camera. And that was something to me that I just found very interesting. Was I would, before there were regulations, I'd take it down the main street, Congress here in Austin, and like just fly at night down Congress, like crazy stuff. But I was flying not FPV in the goggles, but I was flying in the monitor via the GoPro via FPV, which is the same that DJI, Phantoms, Mavics, and all those things. They're actually FPV because people are technically flying them with a first-person view of a camera. So I learned FPV in a frame the shot kind of way and make something look kind of cool. So I started changing lenses on GoPros and all that stuff. And then I just, again, like the videos, I saw them and I'm like, I want to do that. So I bought on eBay top of the line gear. Like, I mean, I don't know what it was at the time, but 20 amp ESCs. They were, Simon K's.
Yep, Simon K's. Yep. And they were like that big, weren't they?
Yep. Yeah. And MN, funny enough, the Navigator MN 1806s. And then just whatever. I got a ZMR kit. It was a gray kit, like a carbon fiber kit and some other stuff. And I built it with a CC3D and I powered it. And 2 of the motors smoked. And 2 of the ESCs smoked. So I emailed the guy on eBay. This was January like 2016, the very first like week. And I emailed the guy and he says, he emails me back. No, I'm sorry. I email him and I say, hey, I had this stuff. I put it together. I know what I'm doing. I built this other drone and it's awesome. I know what I'm doing. And he's like, man, who knows, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I email him back and I'm like, look, like I just want to see what I can do. So he calls me. And his name is Paul Dowling. And you're not supposed to call customers from eBay. But he calls me and he's like, hey, man, I'm in Vegas at CES and As soon as I get back, I have more motors coming in, and I'm going to send you a whole new setup. He's like, "Oh, I want to talk to you about it, but like, I want you to build it a certain way, and I'll send you all new gear." So I was like,
Wow.
sure. So he sends me a full setup of like all new ESCs, all new everything. And he tells me he wants me to build it upside down. And if anybody knows Paul Dowling, he's actually from Canada. He had a company called Autobotics. And Autobotics was basically one of the bigger first kind of FPV online stores. He later started being, very supportive of the FPV scene and helping build Team Canada and some of that stuff. And now you know him for Drone Dry. So he makes Drone Dry. But without him really giving me that stuff, I probably wouldn't have tried building again. Like I probably would have been like, well, I just wasted a bunch of money. I'm going to go back to flying the big stuff. So he was really like part of like how I got into it. And then from there, I mean, like everybody else, it was first time in the goggles. It was therapy, and it was everything that I wanted to do as far as I couldn't do. I couldn't be a fighter pilot, so now I can be. I couldn't fly like a bird, now I can. I can't. I'm not scared of heights, but I'm uncomfortable at situations that are dangerous, and usually big heights trigger that in human beings. There are some people that can ignore that and go completely past it. I'm one of those people that stands on the ledge of the building and goes, "Hey, I'm going to take 3 steps back. Y'all have fun looking over that." You know what I mean? Again, I'll go up to the top floor. It's cool. So it just made me like kind of get over all that and just be like, hey, in this moment right now for this set period of time, I'm going to go do this. And I was in control of that, So I think it's like everyone from there. It's just human nature. Once you experience that for the first time, it's hard to not do it. And so you have to get successful enough to make it therapeutic and fun and a release, not,
right.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing. Boom. Or I'm soldering something. I don't know what I'm doing, So I think that's, my origin story, if you would.
That's a good story. And it's really cool. And I think it captures, especially the early spirit of the community, that, this guy calls you up. He's not supposed to. He takes out of his own pocket and sends you a whole new setup. Right. And then gives you the wisdom that he needs to build it. And that, I think, to me, is kind of the essence of the way that FPV is, or at least used to be. And there's questions on the community, but I don't want to get into the community right now.
No.
Yeah. But
I would say that I think that what you're saying is that spirit of let me help the other person. And kind of do it to further everything. I think it's there a lot more than people think. I think that
altruism.
Later, it's more about people aren't willing to ask the right questions. Like they're not asking questions. They're making statements. They're and those are two very different things. I mean, there's a very basic, I think, principle of I read this book in college. Everything's an argument, and like. Everything's an argument, but argument is not a bad word. And like, That's the problem is like, we're trained a different way, I think. But again, we'll get to that later, I'm sure.
Yeah. So you have been around the FPV scene for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, not the very beginning, but I started around the last part of the first year of organized FPV. And I think that's what people tend to not really recognize is, yes, FPV existed forever. Like, people been, you'll always hear somebody say, well, I did it in 1993. Well, I did it in 1987. Well, I did it in 1972. Again, there's lots of perspectives of what FPV is. So the first organized way of doing this, which was we can go do this together. I think that was like that 2015-16 era. So, yeah. Okay.
So tell me, give me a couple stories. Tell me some crazy stories that you've seen.
I mean, I've been a part of some of these stories, and I've also seen them from kind of a few different perspectives. I think it's interesting that a lot of people haven't changed and are who they are, and it's interesting that the life cycle or the circle, and I think Chad calls it the hype cycle sometimes, or other people call it different things, but I think there's a a circle of repetition. Like a history always repeats itself. We say this in bigger terms, but we mean that usually in large scales of time. I think in our community, it's repeated itself almost, it's becoming exponentially repetitive. Like the faster, every day it gets faster and faster because more people join and are part of it. And that pushes the history to the back, right? And so, for instance, I met Trappy because I built this F450, and then I took this F450, and within 2 weeks, I had researched what the coolest thing to do with that was. Well, guess what it was? Turn it into a Team Black Sheep Discovery. And you could do that by just basically taking everything and just grabbing new top plates and bottom plates and putting them together, and boom. And then you put a gimbal on the front. Back then, people were starting to 3D print stuff, so you could like do different things that way. But I build this thing, and I'm like totally a TBS fanboy, but I'm not on Facebook really, because at this point, I had been living on some forums called Ultimate RC, and Ultimate RC was a really big like kind of Facebook thing, right? Like right before Facebook broke. And there was lots of drama, lots of stuff. Jang like basically brought down max amps and then got censored for it. And then like just all kinds of stuff. Like Jang was the Bardwell of RC, like ground RC. Anywho, so I got banned from Ultimate RC for like, I don't know, just the typical basically like making a comment and like taking it a little too witty and truthful to like, you know what I mean? Like where you're like, look, dude, you're getting to a point where you're just being a whatever, right? And I crossed the line. I knew I crossed the line, but I got banned for like 30 days. And it was like the end of my world in RC, right? I'm like, what am I going to do? So I start booting up to my Facebook page that I haven't played with in like 5 years. Like I created a Facebook page and it just sat there. So I start playing with Facebook and I start finding groups, and then that's where I run into this TBS group, and it was for TBS Discovery, which is like one of the oldest kind of FPV based groups out there. I mean, you can look at even the wing groups that they had, and I join it, and Hugo Salinas, who a lot of people may know from the kind of early days, has kind of come and gone. He was posting about a job he had done with some clients, and the OSD on the core said, when you were finished with your flight, flew like a girl, and it would say yes or no. And so this was a TBS joke, right? I mean, I get it. And in today's world, oh my gosh, could you imagine? And it has actually been broached a few times in the last year or so that this is still technically a hidden function, I think. So at the end of the day, though, I saw this guy post saying that his clients, like he needed a way to take it off because he didn't think it was appropriate for business, and he was using his things for business. And basically, him and Trappy got into a back and forth about it, and Trappy said, look, that's who we are. If you don't like it, go buy something else. And I jump in, never been here before, never made a post, and I like dig into Trappy. And I'm like, bro, that's BS. Dude, I built my F450. I love it. It's amazing. Your stuff's so cool and innovative. They're using it for business, man. Like, why are you being so obtuse to the fact that, like, it's inappropriate? Whether you think it's a joke or not, it's a business thing. And your client, your customer is telling you, like, he wants to build more of these and sell more. And again, if anybody ends up knowing Hugo was all business. Like, he was taking this and really one of the first to turn it into, like, a real business. And so it was just interesting. And so me and him had it out. Basically, by the end of the thread, Remo came on and said he was going to get it fixed. So a few weeks later, like there was a change to the core and it became an option to turn it off. Eventually, I think it slid away. But the point is, we've always been going at each other, and we've always been trying to bring the truth to each other and the reality of, hey, yes, we're here to have fun. Yes, this is based on something. But I think at the end of the day, everybody does come together when it's like, make it, let's talk about it and make it business. I think there becomes that breaking point where we've seen everybody kind of comes together.
So let's get like deep into it real quick. What pays the bills for you?
Well, aside from my wife, who's an amazingly supportive, spouse and partner and everything, my day job has been the drone industry for almost 4 years. I've kind of made my way into it to a company that was based in the application side of the Phantoms, Inspires, consumer drone products. And I kind of made that transition just by positioning myself. I, again, was really into the bigger stuff at first. And so, you know, I had a 3DR Solo as one of the first 30 that ever shipped. And that's actually how my YouTube channel got started kind of big, was being one of the first 30 to receive a very anticipated product in that scene. My YouTube channel went from, I think, 600 users to like 2,000 in about a month and a half. Basically, I just started making content. Every day I was live streaming or doing some kind of video about the 3DR Solo, because it was, I mean, for 3 to 6 months, probably the most controversial and kind of polarizing product. I mean, it really could do some things that were different than anybody else, and it set the bar in some areas that DJI really did very quickly jump to move and try to chase down, ultimately with some launch issues, which is the same type of stuff we see every day in FPV. Kind of is this immature product coming to market, and this hype behind it that makes somebody make a decision that says, no, it's got to go today. And being a part of that, and being kind of one of the people that was focused, like people were focused on my user, you know, experience, it just afforded me opportunities. I started talking to companies about, you know, can I test different things, you know, different flight controllers, and a couple companies let me do some things with them. And then one asked me to come to CES in 2016 and help communicate from a Chinese company to the English, you know, user base that was coming through to, you know, explain what their product did. And I took the opportunity and I went with it. So I went and hung out in, you know, Vegas. Funny enough, it was the first time I actually went to a major event, and I went to XDC2. Formed a lot of, you know, very foundational bonds with some people that, you know, even just a few weeks ago I kind of drew upon. I met Harrison Gale for the first time. You know, it was his event. He was behind all the XDC events, and he was just a couple of weeks ago on our South by Southwest panel that we had that discussed the entertainment and the drones and stuff like that. So, you know, I met him and a lot of pilots, you know, Gars and Code Red, and I met Anub and everyone, Chris Thomas, Scully, everybody there at that event. And again, that just kind of laid the groundwork for how I wanted to kind of continue. So, I met a contact at the event, or at CES, and they offered me a job a couple months later from just basically my experience within the community, my knowledge of the market at the time. Again, I had tested a lot of stuff. I had brought a lot of things and made content around it. So I had I didn't have a resume, but I had a lot of visual resume. Like, this is what I do. And when we had conversations with different people, they would rely on me to be that expert. I mean, I would get introduced at meetings as, hey, this is our drone expert. So I worked for that company for 15 months. We developed an app. It was a working app. And then, you're a developer, you know how this works. Basically, they decided early on to go with a hybrid platform, and needed it to be native for some Twilio plugins that had changed in services. And that means rebuilding 2 different, you know, ground up platforms, and that just wasn't in the budget. So they pivoted. I moved on, and I got a job with a Chinese company. So a Chinese drone manufacturer called GDU. That company was trying to chase down DJI. I mean, everybody's trying to chase DJI in the consumer market. I got the job, funny enough. Some might say it would be trolling them. It wasn't. I had been in their group for 2 years since I had been at CES 2016, and the video is on my channel still today that I interviewed someone from there and said they were the drone company to watch for the next 2 years. And I watched them, and for 2 years they did nothing. So I woke up one day on a Saturday, and in their group, they posted a picture. The main guy posted a picture of like their new drone, but it's their old drone, with a new camera, but it's just a regular camera, and it's zip tied. And someone else had trolled them on it, and someone else had. And I said something to the long of, hey, it would be really nice if we could just get a real explanation of what's going on in this picture. We just want to know, is it a real product or is it, prototype? And a conversation started, and then basically I got a message. And the message said, did you know that we're opening a customer support in an office in the U.S.? And I said, no. And they said, well, we're doing it in Texas. And I said, well, that's interesting. I'm in Texas. And they said, yeah, it's in Austin. And I said, well, that's even more interesting. I'm in Austin. And I never even heard that this was going on. And I'm pretty well connected within the scene.
Right.
So basically they were like, well, we'd love to meet with you. Why don't you come? We're interviewing tomorrow. So the next day I interviewed with the company, like the head CEO and a couple of other guys in the drone division. And we sat at a table and they said, how do we catch DJI? And I told them, you can't and you won't. But you can do some things to like differentiate yourself and capture different areas of the market. And that's what you should be focused on. And by the end of the conversation, they offered me a job. So it was the weirdest thing that like I didn't I mean, at that point I thought, I'm just going to tell it how it is. And they hired me. We did a lot of R&D, and I really tried to help mold the company and show them the right path. They really started moving down a lot of those paths for the year. And again, about 15 months I worked for them total. But ultimately they were already too deep into something. It was the same situation. Committed tons of money. The parts are molded. The bins are full of boards. You can't send them back to the factory and have them remade. We got to do what we got to do. And that was where I just was like, you know what? Like, it's time for me to start looking for my next opportunity and this time I wanted to make it count. Like this was going to be my last kind of, if I can't make it work in this industry, then I'm going to have to go back to the restaurant stuff. I was good at it. I was really good at it. I was successful and I loved it. The thing I hated was the hours. But if I got to do it just to kind of get back into, like you said, where does the money come from? There's not a lot of money in this industry. I mean, even the top tier drone side of FPV or not, there's just not a lot of money. There's not a lot of development going on, which means there's just not. So anyways, I decided that, I needed to find something, and an opportunity presented itself close to home. Flynoceros, a brand that I followed from kind of the beginning of my FPV, journey, as Josh Ingram had created his brand about an hour outside of my hometown. So he was very prevalent in the multi-GP scene and all of that stuff. And he was working on some stuff, asked for some help, as he does within the community. A couple of us showed up to the field, and he mentioned the name of a company that I had talked to, and we just started talking. And next thing you knew, he was in a position to start growing his company, and he said, hey, I'd love for you to be kind of my first guy. And together, me and him, starting, middle of last year, just worked and just started putting things that we can't, I'm not going to be able to really talk about, but we started working on things that are not upfront things we can show the FPV world, but it's affecting the FPV world in positive ways, and it's doing things for the market, and it's building the market and the industry in ways that it's never going to be seen, and it's not really ever going to be talked about, and that's cool. But for me, it's really great because I'm able to kind of connect and make things happen. So for me, I'm finally in a position where I'm operations manager for a company. So I help make the decisions that are shaping not only our company, but the deals that we're making and the partnerships that we're trying to forge is stuff that I really, truly think will help make the future of the market successful. And that's only going to happen if we come together. So what I do to pay the bills is what the question was, and it took me this long to get here. But I connect the dots that need to be connected or are there, and the only way that I can know them is to be kind of in the community and be a part of it. And so I still fly as much as I can, and I still get on Facebook, and I try to balance is it work, and is it a work response versus this is a Troy response and this is my personal opinion response. It's hard, but all of that is actually part of my job. And then basically I'm on my computer all day long, spreadsheets, budgets, putting numbers together, talking to the people again, like, talking to guys like Andy Shin and saying, hey man, I'm seeing that you're selling product. We build drones. Like, that's what we're doing. I mean, people don't know that we're building a lot of drones, but I'm building a lot of drones, and I can build lots of different types, and I'd love to build yours. And so that's what we're doing, is trying to figure out, how can I help a guy like Andy make his product and not take 20 hours out of his work week to help fulfill orders, that if I can build and fulfill, he can build more product, or he can design more designs and make new cool stuff and go work with new people or old people, or, so empowering, people is what we do and what I do. So
that is very, very cool. And I think the thing that the takeaway for me on this is that, you have fulfilled the dream of many. So just hear me out. So many guys that I talk to would give an arm and a leg, but they'd want to keep their hands so they could still fly, to be a part of the drone industry. You've made it to a degree, right? Like there's an aspect of what you do is that FPV is your job. And there are so many people that are aiming for that and want that to happen. I was one of them, right? Like, software engineer. I was unhappy at a company that I was at, and I picked up drones in early 2016, FPV, about that time, and was ready to give all the money of software engineering up, which pays very well, and see if I could make a smaller living in drones. And I had ideas, man. I was gonna do like laser tag or something like that with drones, right? And this was the dream. And
hold on. Then you heard Alex Greaves did it back in 1997.
Oh right. Kidding. I mean, yeah. Like, I would still love to see that happen. I think someone
Absolutely.
tried.
Yeah.
But
I have laser tag drones, actually, like little.
Yeah. Well, you got the laser tag. Yeah, but dude, I'm talking like. We want to be fighter pilots here. Come on.
I think we're close. No.
Go ahead.
Right. No. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to say, like, you are right. I've made the dream, and I in no way I get up every day and I appreciate the fact that I am able to work in the industry. I do want to kind of correct a possible kind of misunderstanding that I think a lot of people have. Is it's not like any other industry. It's just like I said about the restaurant industry. You get into it and you get successful at it and you like what you do, but there's still something, and to the restaurant industry, it was the hours. To being in the industry, and FPV is not my job. I happen to work in an industry where we do business in the FPV market. But I do business stuff all day. I very little get to create anymore. I mean, my channel, I literally just mass uploaded like the last 8 videos I forgot to upload like a couple days ago, which were still only like 8 videos over 4 months. But I used to make a video a day at one point. I used to make 3 videos a week at least. So yes, FPV is my job, but I have given up all of that other stuff. And it was hard. I mean, there's people that are going to watch this that'll probably be able to recognize that, especially early on, like it was hard for me to stop talking so much. And obviously I'm a talker, but in Facebook, I can't respond to everything anymore because it gets twisted and turned in so many ways that I can't afford it as a business. And it's not my business. It's my boss's business. And I respect that. So there's a lot that we do in the industry that we give up. And I think in racing, people also think that it's a free business, like that these top pilots are paid to travel. There's like 3 pilots that get paid year-round salaries to travel and race, maybe 5. Like, I don't know. There's not a lot, basically. And so guys like Evan, guys like, all the top pilots. I'm sorry, I don't know why I went just to Evan. Evan, Alex, just the top guys. They're paying, however, they're funding their own travel most of the times and their own expenses. And they're giving up, again, doing something else. What if drone racing all of a sudden just disappears? All these young, great racing pilots also are giving up sometimes educations and stuff. And most of them actually aren't. They're actually working super hard to kind of balance both. But yeah, I mean, it's a dream job, but it's also kind of thankless, and you don't get to fly a lot. So,
well, and that it's so funny that you went that direction, because my question was, how has your relationship with FPV changed since you've been working in FPV? And I think you answered it, which is, there's a lot that you gave up.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, though. Again, at the end of the day, and I think anyone would say this, you ask anybody that actually works in this industry, and there's lots of them that, again, people don't even see or recognize, they'll tell you that, I mean, if they could choose between going to fly a pack or working on something that's going to be a deal that makes something else happen, or develops a new, spend the extra hours to figure out how to make this new code work, or whatever it is, that they would do, whatever it took to make progression over going and flying and progressing as a pilot. Just because I think we all are rooted in some degree that history. We understand, a lot of us that are working in this industry, how far we've come in the technology. And then that gets back to the cycle, right, where we were talking earlier, which is the community cycle of new versus old. And we're in the minority now. Like, we're all working so hard in the industry, if we are working in it, that we don't have voices, we don't have the time, and we're not putting out content. So we're not relevant anymore. And then we have all these new folks coming in, and a very good percentage of them have great talents, but that's saturating a market. And then you have the other half of the new ones that are unsuccessful or just unexperienced, but have an opinion on everything, like me. Like I was when I first showed up. I get it. But if in the beginning the majority were able to kind of cull the herd to some degree, and now it's the wild. I mean, guys like us, we just don't even have the time or the care, and so we see what we see, right?
Yeah.
How do we handle the backlash is kind of just shut down, like just let it just us.
I don't want to. I want to keep this interview focused to a degree on kind of the industry, but I do want to touch on this real quick. We are at, whether or not anybody recognizes it yet, we have crossed a threshold in the industry in like the past 3 weeks, and I think it's very interesting, some of the things that have happened, and I think you probably know what I'm referring to. Whatever is happening over in, the Rotor Riot land, I think is starting to bleed out into a lot of other places. And I think that it's a shame, because the guys like you that have all the history, I think you nailed it on the head. You guys don't have a voice anymore.
No, I mean, and we never really had one, to be quite honest. I mean, it gets back to the polarization thing. I mean, I'm happy being a polarizing person. I'm not happy. I mean, the results from it make me happy, right? Like getting people to be introspective or rethink their position, or just validate that another position is possible. Like that's a win to me. Like, because too many people impose the opposite, again, and I'm one of those people, again, I get called a troll a lot, and a lot of times it's because I'll argue a point that I don't even believe in, right? And it's because I'll see a bunch of people teaming up on somebody and saying, hey, our opinion is right, yours sucks. And it's like, that's all cool, guys, like voice your opinion. But again, it ask the question or make a statement, but you don't need to pile on top of that the insults and the injuries, right? Right. If you choose to make a statement, make the statement and know that people are going to question it. If you're going to create a question, know that people are going to make a statement about the question and probably still question the question. But
you definitely, and I will say this, having put out some of the content that I've put out, everybody's got an opinion, and people, I put out this one video. It was the 4 mistakes that advanced pilots make. And the 4 big mistakes that advanced pilots make, right? And like, my flying time is minimal. I don't have the opportunity to go out and fly very often.
Yeah.
And I have this one little spot that I love right now. It's like this massive traffic circle. And, but the only problem with it is it's got power lines that run through it. And, I posted I went out to fly as much as I could for 45 minutes. And, I had a few impacts with the lines. And I posted a couple of those impacts with the lines in this video that I was making. And I've had so many people come out and be like, dude, you're super dangerous. Like, you need to, you're going to ruin the hobby, man. I mean, like, you need to think about what you do. And I will say that it's made me step back and think about it. But
so like, that's the thing. Like, so how did you feel about that? Let me ask you, do you feel like people were being a jerk?
No, most people weren't. Most people were trying to look out for this thing that we've got going.
So if I came in and I said, hey man, love what you're doing, love that you're so happy that you want to go fly in your front yard, but maybe you should take it to a field and try to avoid the power lines next time, but hey, we all make mistakes. You would be okay with that?
Yes.
See, me and you were saying. Now the problem
there's a lot of people that would be offended by that, though.
Absolutely. So you have half people that are offended by it. Then you have your other half. And probably 80% of those are just jerks that are going to say a more cruder, ruder way, and again, add insult and injury to you're an idiot. I can't believe you did that. Why would you ever do that? You don't deserve to have a multi-rotor. You're ruining the hobby, right? And those are two very different things, right? Like that. It's good community member, bad community member.
Well,
right?
You know what? It's not even community member. It's basic communication skills.
Yeah, but let's talk about it in that bubble, right? Because see, this is why, you brought up that a lot, and I think I cut you off on your question earlier, and I actually think I know you were heading, but you were saying that I made this dream, I made my dreams come true, and to a lot of degrees I have. I set a goal and I told myself if I don't attain this goal by a certain time frame, which I did have a time frame that I was trying to be in the industry, and I made it. And so yeah, I totally did that. But it's not just about the dream, and in reality, whenever we're talking about this bubble, like I've gotten to where I am because I was successful in another industry, much like a lot of people successful in this industry. And I applied what I knew, and I learned along the way how to shape those things into this. And then now I was able to basically apply them in our industry. Now, the problem is there's good employees and there's bad employees. And the thing I learned in business was you tell someone once, you explain it to them twice, and then the third time you have to start looking for their replacement. And if we use that same kind of theory in a community, you have a good employee that you teach them and they learn why to do it the right way, and they try to do it the right way. But then you teach somebody and they ignore it and do it their way anyways because their way is better. As of the guy, you reteach it. When they still don't listen, hey man, you move on and I got to find someone else. And I feel like that's the same with the community. You have good community member, bad community member. Hey Troy, you were kind of a jerk and you shouldn't have said whatever you said. You got too cheeky with it. I think I'm being witty, but maybe I touched on something that I didn't realize was offensive, right? Kind of thing. Okay, man, let me change my comment, delete it. I apologize. Won't happen again. If it's me, it's going to totally happen again. But you reach out to me and I'll explain myself. We'll come on common ground. I'll delete it. We'll move on. Bad community member is, hey, you're a jerk. You can clearly see they're just, they're crude. You message them, hey, you're out of line completely. That is not acceptable. Do it again. You're booted. The response usually will be one of two things. Hey, I didn't. Oh, you're right. I would. But kind of either way, you're already leaning towards bad employee, right? Or bad community member.
Yeah.
So you kind of just have to rip the Band-Aid off and just kick them out and be done with it. And then I don't know where this kind of started, but yeah, good employee, good community member, bad community member. Like I try to be a good one at times. I think I'm seen as polarizing and negative because I question and I ask the tough stuff. You know, you say you're doing the best and it's the best planet. I'm going to ask you why. Show me why. You know.
Well, having an opinion and being critical is a polarizing thing.
Yeah.
And there's just no getting around that. You know, I work in the software industry, and let me tell you something. You wanna find out how wrong you are. Stand up in front of a group of software engineers and tell them what truth is. And let me tell you, you will come to see Jesus quickly. which you know, for me is actually a lot of fun. So there you have it. Troy has some really good perspective on the industry in general and what it takes to make it in there. And it's not about the glamour of flying. It's not about all the, you know, fun, amazing stuff. It's about spreadsheets and hard stuff. And what's interesting is that the commonalities between what he and Drew both experience is that the day-to-day is hard work and it requires a lot of thinking. And not as much flying as you might think. Anyways, thank you for the segment, Troy. And you should hear one more thing from him. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and comment. And I will talk to you later. And maybe we'll see about the audio because I moved the camera and I'm not hopeful. Talk to you soon. Bye.